Hey everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcavage. We're back for another edition of Thyroid Thursday, and today I got another listener question I wanted to cover. I think I've talked about this multiple times on Thyroid Thursday. I've talked about this on the podcast, but if people keep asking, it's worth having these conversations. So this is a person who's wondering why their T3 and free T3 levels are low, even though they're taking sufficient levels of T4 medication. And when they finally found a practitioner that provided T3 medication along with the T4 medication, they thought this was going to be the thing to fix their condition, because if their gland is atrophied and if the gland typically makes 5, maybe 10 micrograms per day, then getting T4 that should replace what the gland makes and getting some T3 that should replace what the gland makes should have made this person feel better. Unfortunately, their concern is that they took the T3 and the T3 only provided maybe 3 to 5 days of benefit before the benefits seemed to taper off, and then they would need more T3. They'd feel better temporarily, and then it would taper off, and then they would get more T3. The benefits would be there for a bit, and then it would taper off, and at some point they just didn't feel good at all on the dose of additional T3. So they're really confused. There's people in our space that talk about, well, the thyroid gland makes T4 and T3, so you have to take a medication that has both T4 and T3. And there's a bunch of these glandular products out there. Some people are taking compounded T4 and T3 combination and still don't feel well. So I think the question from this person was really, why is it that it doesn't help long-term adding this T3 to the system? So why would T3 free T levels be low if sufficient T4 and T3 doesn't seem, and why is the combination of T4 and T3 not seem to help? Keep in mind, we talked about this, the thyroid gland makes about 5 to 10 micrograms of T3 per day. There's about 30 micrograms of T3 made per day overall. Most of that's occurring in the peripheral tissues, some that use deiodinase 1 to convert T4 to T3, and others, and probably the bulk, that use deiodinase 2 to convert T4 to T3 inside their cells. So they're bringing T4 from the bloodstream into the cell. The cell's then making a decision, do I want to increase my metabolism or decrease the metabolism based on everything that's going on in the environment. If the cell wants to increase metabolism, it converts more of that T4 to T3. If it wants to slow its metabolism, it can deactivate that T4 to reverse T3. So if this is the case, right? Somebody's got hypothyroidism, they've been placed on thyroid medication, T4 only. They don't feel good, their T3 and free T3 levels are still low. They go to somebody who then provides the T3 and it only provides temporary benefit. What are they supposed to do, and why would their T3 or free T3 be low when they're taking T4 only medication? Should we be giving people T3 medication when T3 levels seem to be low, T3 or free T3 levels? So there's really 4 primary possibilities why, if you have hypothyroidism, if you're on sufficient T4 replacement therapy, why your T3 and free T3 levels would still be low. So these are 4 general thought processes. 1, you have a deiodinase 2 polymorphism. So deiodinase 2 is the enzyme inside cells and tissues that converts T4 to T3. There are some people that have a polymorphism. This is an alteration of the gene that then results in a reduced ability to convert T4 to T3. How many people have that? How big of a deal is it? It's questionable, but it's a possibility. How would you know for sure? You could get genetic testing done that looks at the deiodinase 2 gene. And then what would you do in that situation? Well, there's 2 options of things to do. 1, you could provide additional T3, A, and 2, you could provide cofactors that might help that conversion of T4 to T3 and potentially make that polymorphism work a little bit better. 2, you're probably in the gray zone with your T4 dosing. So typically when you provide T4 that's sufficient, and there's no cell stress response in the tissues, and the cells are what we call in thyroid homeostasis, you provide enough T4 that replaces what the thyroid gland would typically make. The cells, they're in homeostasis, low stress states, they'll bring the T4 into the cell, convert it into T3. However, if you exceed the amount of T4 in the bloodstream, then what happens is too much T4 in the bloodstream can deactivate the enzyme deiodinase 2, so you get reduced peripheral conversion of T4 to T3. Now, why would the body do that? You start to see rising levels of T4 in the bloodstream, hypothalamus gets saturated, and one of the things that can happen then is the body is saying, whoa, we're starting to get too much T4 in the bloodstream. Let's reduce the conversion of T4 to T3 to prevent a more hyperthyroid state. And so you get an upregulation of deiodinase 3, which is the deactivating hormone. And I call this the gray zone for T4 medication because you're taking more T4 medication than you may need, but you're not taking excessive amounts of medication, T4 medication, where you might activate or divert what's called deiodinase 1 from its primary role. So deiodinase 1 is the enzyme that primarily metabolizes reverse T3 and gets it out of the system. That's its primary goal. It does do some conversion of T4 to T3, but that's not its primary goal. Its primary goal is to metabolize reverse T3. And so if the system becomes flooded with way too much T4, then what happens is deiodinase 1 says, hey, forget that reverse T3. I've got to start deactivating some of this excessive amounts of T4, because the fastest way to get thyroid hormone out of the system is to convert it to T3, because the half-life of T4 is about 7 days. The half-life of T3 is about 24 hours. And so the fastest way to reduce the amount of thyroid hormone, kind of slow down this hyperthyroid state that's been induced by excessively too much T4 medication, is to divert deiodinase 1 from its primary job of metabolizing reverse T3 to converting T4 to T3. So in that situation, you will get, when you take the right amount of T4 replacement is good, then you see excessive, then you see too much and you'll see a drop in T3. And then if you see extreme too much T4, then you'll see an elevation of T4 and T3, because it's just too much thyroid, way too much. You're in a true hyperthyroid state with the medication, okay? And the third answer is, the reason you'd see a low T3 or free T3 is that there's some type of cell stress, excessive cell stress, cell danger response going on to cells, and they don't want to upregulate the metabolism. I talk about this all the time. Cells operate either from a low stress state where their primary role is manufacturing, they need a lot of T3, or from a stress state, and in that state they want to reduce the conversion of T4 to T3 inside the cells to slow down the manufacturing and ramp up cell defense. So if you have cells and tissues that are in this more cell stress, down regulation of the metabolism, if you replace what the thyroid gland was supposed to be making with T4, that T4 is probably not going to convert to T3 in high levels. That's why your T3 would be low. When a doctor sees that conversion's low and then they come in with T3, they think they're going to just top off the tank. The problem is the cells and tissues don't want more T4 and T3. So it helps temporarily, then the cell figures out, oh, we got to deactivate this stuff. We don't want to increase metabolism, and the levels kind of taper off again. And then the fourth reason might be that there's a combination of these factors. Maybe you do have genetic polymorphism. Maybe you're on too much thyroid hormone replacement, and maybe you have a cell danger response all at the same time, or some combination of those things. So if you don't feel well on the appropriate level of T4 for your size, for your age, for your body weight, and you see low T3 and free T3 levels, it's likely that there's some type of cell stress response or maybe a combination of these factors. Hope this helps. Put your questions below wherever you watch the video.